All right. So, guys, quick agenda for today. So today we're going to talk about what is motivation, some myths about motivation, and some toxic, let's say, positivity quotes around motivation, which are not very helpful. And then I'll give you 5 strategies that you can use to build sustainable motivation. Why we're here? What is the goal of this webinar? Well, we want to help you achieve a few things. So the first one is really to identify myths about motivation. The other one is to help you identify some motivational pitfalls and really help you become more self-aware as to what helps you stay motivated and productive and what doesn't. Obviously, we want to help you get better results in your jobs and ideally be happier at work. Now, motivation deep dive. Of course, we all have those days, in which we feel super motivated, right? And everything seems very easy. We wake up with the right food and everything is amazing, right? It's all like flowers and rainbows and we're super productive and so on. But let's be honest, most of the days they're not like this, right? And I guess that's the case for all of us here, because otherwise we wouldn't be interested in a webinar related to how we can be more motivated or keep our motivation in a more sustainable way, right? Now, the problem is that indeed not every day is the same, and there can be some things that happen during the day which are not really helpful for our motivation. Now, after training more than 500 business developers from literally anywhere in the world, you can see also here how international this community is. We identified that there are actually a few problems very common to business development and also to other functions, but some are very specific for BD, which can really impact your motivation levels. And then it becomes really difficult to, to keep productive and, to keep working and just be doing your job. Now, the first one is, the first one can be a lack of recognition, right? So maybe you're putting a lot of work into what you do. If your business development role involves a lot of cold outreach, maybe you're sending a lot of emails and so on. But no matter what happens, like your manager, your boss, they're really dismissive of what you're doing, right? They don't really recognize the value that you bring to the company. That is especially true for people that work in business development, because sometimes business development doesn't generate immediate results in terms of revenue, for example, which means our boss or manager, might think and not necessarily rightly think that we're not doing a proper job, right? So that can really be a big problem, especially, and we'll see it a little bit later, if you're more motivated by external factors, such as, for example, the recognition of your boss. So this can be a little bit demotivating. The other one, which is super typical for BD, is having unrealistic expectations, right? I worked for many different companies and some of them were absolutely unrealistic. So after 1 month I was working there, they were asking me how many deals I closed, while I was just trying to figure out my way. I was sending a lot of emails and nobody was responding. I started feeling really stressed and it wasn't a very nice experience, right? And the expectations were not really realistic either, because, well, in 1 month, there's just as many people you can reach out to. In the first month working in a new company, you have a lot to learn. Maybe you're left alone to learn. So that can be a little bit of a problem. Of course, we also do a lot of repetitive tasks. Now, personally, I do love to do some repetitive tasks. I don't mind copy pasting things when I see that there is a good outcome at the end. But repetitive tasks, especially if they're very boring and they don't give you any sort of reward at the end. For example, one thing I don't like to do is the administration, right? So having to put all the invoices in our software and talking to the accountant, that's something I really don't like to do. And I always have to do it every 3 months. So that is a repetitive task I don't like, because I don't see really a nice outcome, right? But repetitive tasks can really hinder your motivation. The other one is not getting feedback. Now, a few years ago, we had an employee, actually. She ended up leaving after 1 year, more or less. And one thing she told me when she left, we always do a feedback form with all our employees. She told me that I wouldn't give her enough feedback, and not giving her feedback was actually a problem for her. Now, the problem is that she was doing such a great job that's true. And I barely had negative feedback or constructive feedback, most of my feedback was really positive because she was really doing a great job. But this was not good for her motivation because she needed to have a little bit of challenge, and she needed to have some sort of feedback that things were going the right way, but very specific feedback, which I failed at giving to her. Now, another problem with motivation, or something that can really make us demotivated, is not having clear goals. Now, if we're just, if our boss tells us, oh, look, we need to generate revenue, this doesn't mean anything. Like, generating revenue can come from many different ways. What does it mean? How much revenue should we generate? How many people do I need to reach out to, right? Very often, people that work in BD, they don't have such goals. Like, you can't imagine how many times I talk to people that come to our training and they actually don't have KPIs in their job, which is insane, because if you don't have like specific goals and you don't say, for example, oh, we want to get 10 clients this month, or we want to generate X amount of revenue in the year, that's already something, then you really set people up for failure, because they actually have no guidelines or no end goal, right, to look up for. And then the last reason why we tend to get motivated, or many people tend to get motivated, is poor leadership. So when you have a leadership which is not very clear, they don't seem to have a proper strategy, they don't care about their people, that can be really bad for motivation. Back in 2017, I worked for a company that unfortunately had a bad case of poor leadership. Most of us, the people that were working in the team with me, actually, we all left the company within 6 months. And by the end of these 6 months, they actually changed the entire leadership, because it was really not effective, not working. People were not happy. And eventually that ended up costing the company a lot of money. Now, as you can see, there are a lot of elements why we might feel demotivated. But as you can notice, some of these things are pretty much external factors, right? Now, there are also a lot of internal factors that don't make us very motivated, let's say for our jobs, which could be we are not really aligned with the values of the company, we don't really like the product that we're selling, or we think actually we're cut for something else, not for this, right? But we have to do that job because that pays the bills, and yeah, okay, fine, we have to do that, right? So there are many reasons why we might feel demotivated, but of course the goal of today, and this is one of the most negative slides, for the rest we try to be positive and really understanding a bit better how motivation works and what we can do to take advantage of it. Now, when we're talking about motivation, what we're talking about is basically that process that helps us initiate and guide us and help us maintain goal-oriented behaviors. Now, there are two different, there are many ways in which motivation impacts our job as business developers, but I would argue that's pretty much for any other function or even any other hobby, anything else that you're doing in your life. Pretty much whenever you do it with motivation, it's actually a little bit better, it feels better. Now, people that, business developers that are highly motivated, they tend to get a lot of benefits from it. The first one is they tend to be more productive and efficient, right? Because they work more seamlessly, right? So they do their task at hand, they focus on that, move on to the next one. They understand the causality between the tasks that they're doing and the outcome that they can get. And that basically helps them stay motivated and reach these peaks of productivity and efficiency. Motivated BDs, they're also more proactive in seeking opportunities and taking initiative. Now, proactivity is a very important aspect of being a business developer. Now, we did a lot of service both with business developers, but also, and probably interesting for you as well, with the managers of these business developers, right? And we asked them, okay, what makes a good business developer for you? Now, all of them, they mention many things, but all of them, they mention that for them, a great business developer is someone that is very proactive, that doesn't need to get their hands hold, they don't need much guidelines, someone that is very autonomous, but proactive, someone that finds solutions, right, when they're stuck. And typically, these people tend to be more motivated than other ones, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be making the extra mile to, reach their goals. They also tend to be better at decision-making and problem solving. They're better at building relationships and nurturing these relationships, which of course, for all of us working in business development, we know that that's one of the most critical aspects of BD, is actually to nurture these relationships. And motivated VDs also tend to be most resilient in face of setbacks or challenges, right? Again, because they have this intrinsic drive that doesn't really make them worried when there is a challenge, or so. If anything, they love the challenge, they embrace it, and then they take the most out of that situation. Now, there are two different types of motivation. We mentioned already something about external factors, but really there are two main types of motivation. The first one is intrinsic, and the other one is extrinsic motivation. Now, the intrinsic motivation is a type of motivation that comes from within. It comes from you. You don't need anyone else or anything else to make you motivated. So, starts within. It's effortless. It's something that you could be doing all the time, and you would be always happy to do that, right? So it's just like you don't need an external push. It's effortless for you to do that task. There are no rewards expected, so you don't do something, you don't send messages on LinkedIn or send emails because you expect these people to respond, but because you know that that is the process to get what you want eventually. So it doesn't matter, but you're doing it because that's what needs to be done. And when you're intrinsically motivated, usually your focus is on the journey, really on the process, not necessarily on the outcome, right? So the journey is what's most important to you, because that's where you learn, where you get most of the fun from doing these activities, while the outcome is just a result of a great job. As we talk about this, I really invite you to think and really reflect a little bit about your specific case, and try to think about your current job or past jobs. You know, how do you feel? What is it that really motivates you? Is it something internal, or is it more your manager telling you that you're great, right? So start thinking about it as we move along these slides. Now, extrinsic motivation, of course, is all the opposite. So usually comes from external factors. You do your tasks and you work and you meet your friends, or you are great at school, or whatever else that is, because you want the rewards. So you put a lot of focus on the rewards that you can get from your activities, or you act to avoid punishment. That's the other thing, right? So it's like, oh, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to speed when there is the red light because, well, I'm going to get a fine, right? So that's great. So fear can be a good motivator, let's say, as well as money, incentives, and so on. But if you really want to build sustainable motivation, you should actually try to move away from the external factors and try to cultivate more your intrinsic motivation. Now, obviously, we're humans, and there are always going to be like some aspects of our life in which we have more extrinsic motivation, more intrinsic motivation. Personally, I'm addicted to tennis. I love to play tennis all the time. So I have a very great internal motivation because it just makes me happy to do that. However, when I do tournaments and competitions, I do it a lot also for the rewards. I like to see my name first in the ranking, right? I like to see my rating going up. So I love that it gives me this dopamine hit, which makes me very happy, right? But the downside of that is that when you don't get your way, then you feel really demotivated and unhappy, because that seems like there is no point in doing these things, right? So you really need to find the balance between what's helpful, what are helpful external factors for your motivation, but really cultivating more of your intrinsic motivation. And this you can really do it if you're aligned with your values and you really know what you want out of your life or your career. Now, and of course, when we talk about extrinsic motivation, the outcome is always most important than the journey. So you can have an amazing journey, but you're probably not even going to notice it, because for you, all that matters is the outcome, right? This is what you get at the end, which again, can be a powerful motivator, but it's very tricky, because if something happens, then you don't have that motivation. Way, you cannot base your life on something that is not all under your control. So better to enjoy the journey and then to reap off the benefits and the outcomes, but not fixating too much on the outcomes. That's not helpful. Now, why toxic motivation? Means every time I open my Instagram or LinkedIn, which now for some ways became even worse than Instagram, I always find this very like a lot of posts talking about motivation and positive thinking and so on. And it feels like, I don't know, every time I look at these things, I'm like, yeah, okay, but I'm a loser, you know, like I'm just like not doing any of these things. even when I try to think positive and to really train my mind to stay positive, it still doesn't work. So what is this? Now, I collected a few based on the posts that I saw recently in this past week, and I want to talk a little bit about them. Now, the first one that really bothers me is when they say, but some people are just motivated, like, you just have motivation and so on. Now, it's not the motivation, you either have it or you don't. It's not genetic. It is not about genetics, right? It's not an innate thing that you have or you don't have. Motivation is a process, as we mentioned before, and you can treat it as a skill. Everybody can have it if you work on it. The other one, and this bothers me, is I do consider myself a high achiever. And it really bothers me when people come to me and they're like, oh, yeah, but you have a company. Oh, yeah, sure. Startup. That's great. Like a fancy life. I don't know what, This happened to me, especially at the beginning. Now I don't pay attention to it anymore. But there is this misconception, that high achievers, they are always motivated, they're always on top of their game and they're always motivated, while it is not true. And if we think that high achievers and successful people are always motivated, then we basically are telling ourselves, if we don't think that we are high achievers, we also think, oh yeah, but I'm not motivated, so that's why. So it gives us an excuse, which is not good. We can all be high achievers again if we put the work into it. And that's the main difference. So it's not that high achievers are always motivated. High achievers do their stuff even when they're not motivated, because they're very committed to their goals. So they're very disciplined. So even if they know that, they don't feel like doing it, they still do it because that's what they need to do, in order to get results. Then the other myth is that you need to be motivated to get started, like so many people, like you just, start your morning was like, oh, like, I'm going to wait a little bit more before starting. I don't feel it. I'm going to take another coffee, or I'm going to take a walk, then after I will feel motivated and so on. And then you arrive at the end of the day that you didn't do anything because you were waiting to be motivated, right? And this happened to me also in the past many times, and I think it's very common also for people to say, I don't feel very motivated. That's fine. What is one day, which is true. If it's just one day, it's not really a problem. But the thing is, if you tend to be more demotivated than motivated, there is a deeper problem that you need to tackle. So if you're always unhappy or demotivated at work, there is a deeper reason for it. And if you just wait to be motivated to find that out, it's not going to work out. So the truth is, you don't need to be motivated. Like, it's the thing is, it's not that you're motivated, then you act, and then you're more motivated. It's actually the other way around. Once you start doing something, even something really small, that's as you do these things and you get feedback and you see the outcome of what you're doing, which can be very basic thing. I don't know, you write a post on LinkedIn and then you see the first person putting a like on your post, right? Again, external validation or external motivation. But you do that, you see the rewards, you see some sort of outcome, and that's gonna make you motivated. Now, other myth, motivation is a constant state, right? So we think, because we check these fancy Instagram pages, that we should always be motivated, because that's what successful people do. We're always motivated, it's constant. We start the morning, we switch on the button of the motivation, and then we're motivated for 8 hours, and then we can switch it off, right? That doesn't really work. It works, it looks a little bit more like this, right? And that's not the case, that there is dopamine sign there, because actually motivation, dopamine really helps us stay motivated, let's say, right? So dopamine really loves when we get rewards. So whenever we're doing something and we see a positive effect of our actions, we get these spikes of dopamine, which in turn makes us more motivated and so on. The problem is, we're not going to feel always like this. So we're going to have these lows, these highs, and that's fine. So your job is more to manage this flow, right? And try to navigate through that and work regardless of the spikes or the lows. Now, the last one, and this really, well, when I was an employee, actually, I used to think the same. Now I don't think the same anymore. And when I look back, I think I was very naive to think that. Now, there is one thing, your employer is responsible to motivate you. which is true to a certain extent, right? Because obviously a company that has motivated employees usually generates more profit, because motivated people, they're actually responsible to generate more revenue for the company. They're the ones that do the job, and they're really the ones that push you forward, right? But your manager is not the one responsible to motivate you, because we're adults. So we shouldn't need a teacher or like an external person that tells us, okay, now you have to be motivated. I'm going to give you, this little reward. I'm going to give you this little thing, and so on. Again, rewards work. And that's why there are so many incentive plans in companies, the gym membership and these and that, team outings and so on. It's all good. And companies should be doing that, because it's important that they also take their part of responsibility. But for us, as individual contributors, or if we have our company, it's exactly the same. If you have a company, you don't have a boss that motivates you. You have to motivate yourself, right? You need to take accountability. So you cannot give such power to an external person, be it your manager, your boss, or whoever else, to decide whether you're motivated or not, or to buy your motivation with incentives, right? So again, that's nice, but you should really strive to be in a job where you feel motivated intrinsically and not because you get a reward. So, and it's really just an exercise of self-awareness, and again, not giving power to an external factor or person to actually decide whether you're motivated or not. Right? Now, stop with the rant and let's see what we can do to build sustainable motivations, right? What are some things that we can implement right away that can help us be a little bit more, a little bit more productive and motivated? Now, the first one is to have a vision and set goals for yourself. And it has been proven that people that set goals, they actually feel more motivated, they're more productive, and overall, they have more fulfilling careers. Why? Because that gives us something to work towards, right? So that if in our, day-to-day activity, we're just doing the same repetitive tasks, and we're sending these messages on LinkedIn, and we're posting on LinkedIn, and we're sending these emails, and, it can be very boring after a while. But the most important is that you need to have something to look forward to. So a specific goal that you want to reach to. When I started the BT school 5 years ago, I had very specific goals every year. Like the first year, I decided, for example, we wanted to train the first 100 people. And why 100? Because I thought that 100 people would be a very good number to validate our course, to make sure that the content was good or that we could improve some stuff and so on. So every time, that I was sending these messages on LinkedIn or sending an email and so on, I would always remind myself, okay, we need to get to the 100 students. And that is the way of doing it, right? So having a vision and setting a goal really gives you the purpose that then motivates you when you really don't feel like doing that thing. So however small, it can be absolutely anything, like it can be in 5 years, I want to become a manager. I want to take my company from 2 to 100 employees in 5 years. I want to find a new job. It can be in 6 months, right? It can be absolutely anything, but you do need to have a vision and goals. The second thing you can do is to build routines. Now, we talked already before about these very successful people, right? That they accomplish so much in their life. Again, they're not always motivated, but they have very solid routines that they follow all the time. They tend to go to sleep at the same time, wake up at the same time, which, spoiler alert, doesn't need to be 5 a.m. if you don't like that. It can be anything, but you need to build routines. But why routines? Not because it's nice and it's like, oh, nice, I have these rituals and routines. Every morning I wake up, I have a coffee, I do the greeting to the sun, I do my yoga and so on. So it's not because it's fancy and that we can put it on Instagram, but because it helps us to condition our brain to say, okay, now we take a coffee, which means in about 20 minutes, we're going to start working, which means in about 2 hours, we're going to eat and so on, right? So it really helps you structure your day feel more productive, but really condition your brain so that whenever you attach these little routines or rituals, your brain knows, oh yeah, it's go time. Great, we have to work. You need to do something small, like, all right, so before starting to work, I get my glass of water, I sit down, I start working. You repeat that all the time, and then eventually you're going to see that your brain knows automatically. You take the water, you sit down, and you start working, right? So it's about conditioning yourselves and training your brain. Now, 3 is to get a challenge. In what sense? Now, there have been a lot of studies about this, and basically what they noticed is that when people are doing something that is too challenging, like it's really out of our capabilities at the moment, we don't like that, we get demotivated, right? So it's, it's too difficult. Why am I bothering doing this? It's not for me, right? That motivates us, and then we stop doing that thing. On the other hand, when the task is too easy, that is also not something we like as humans, because that also demotivates us because it's too easy, right? So what you have to do is really, like, as you build your day, so your working day, try to find that optimal state in which you're mixing things up in a way that it's challenging, but not too challenging, and also not too easy, right? So of course, you're not going to have the luxury of choosing all the time what you have to do, right? Because some things, well, the repetitive tasks, you have to do it whether you like it or not. You just have to, right? So what you can do is to mix it up with other more challenging tasks, right? So that you balance it out, and overall during the day, you do something that is a little bit more challenging and something that is a little bit easier, but you're a little bit in the middle so that you can feel motivated more constantly, basically throughout the day. Now, manage your energy. That's the other thing. So a big mistake I made in the past, but also as I started with the BD school, was just to keep going no matter what. Like, I don't feel like doing it, I keep doing. I already worked 10 hours today, that's fine. I can put 2-3 more hours because I need to finish this thing, right? Now, the problem is that you arrive to a point in which your body simply doesn't have the energy anymore. Maybe you combine it also with the fact that you're not eating very well because you don't have time to eat because you're working too much, right? That's not good. That's not good, because our body at some point is going to stop. We're going to be like, yeah, look, we can't keep going. So you do you, but we are not going to work, right? So you get sick, you get very tired, and you're not productive, right? So as you manage your time throughout the day, also learn to manage your energy. So really recognize when your body needs a break, go out for a walk, take some water, take a coffee, take a snack, take anything, but recognize when your body needs that little break because it needs to recharge. Try to do the same, assess, when your body is like, okay, it's too much, and then take a little bit of time. And now, last tip is to measure your success. Now, why we need to measure our success, and that's why, we said it at the beginning, people that don't get feedback or that don't get recognition, they tend to feel more demotivated. Why? Because they don't see the impact of what they're doing. And we need to see the impact of what we're doing because it gives us a sense of purpose, right? Now, there can be many issues. Maybe in the company you don't have KPIs. That's so common. So they just don't have goals, and then you're just doing things. It's fine, as long as you have like people that are deeply motivated and so on. But you will reach a point in which you're like, oh, why am I doing this? Like, I don't even know what I did this month, right? Now, measuring your success is crucial because first you can see, once again, the impact of your activity, but it also gives you a little bit of a framework to understand what you have to improve, what you have to keep going, and basically it helps you scale your success, right? Because you know what you did well. And once you know what you did well and you're able to build the process around that, then you're going to feel more motivated because you act with consciousness and awareness. So you know what you're doing, and this positive feedback is going to help you feel more motivated. Now, for those of you who like to read, I suggest you these 3 books. Now, the first one is called Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance from Angela Duckworth. Is a great book, really to keep motivated and to keep going when you don't feel like going. The whole premise of the book is that she noticed that the kids, that are told when they're kids that they're great and they're talented and so on, they usually don't do very well in life. Why? Because they have they don't have control over their talent, right? The talent is something you have. It's not something you can cultivate. Well, you could also cultivate, but it's something that is innate, right? So what happens is that these kids that are little geniuses, then they stop trying because they're so talented and everybody's telling them that they're so talented, that then at the end of the day, they actually are not very successful in life. While the ones that were told, she could do better and so on, they're trained to always be doing a little bit more and to keep trying and to really foster this grit within themselves. That can really help you stay motivated and can help you be very successful. The other one is called Flow. The name of the author is so difficult that I will not even pronounce it. It's Mikali, and the surname is very complicated. It's Hungarian. But the Flow book, basically, it helps you how to reach your peak state of performance by really getting into the task and really reach your flow state. Again, if you think about athletes and so on, they're always talk about, I'm in my zone, I'm in the flow. And probably you've experienced it too, like those days, the day goes by and you're like, oh, wow, I did so much. I was so productive today. Amazing, right? So that is a book for you if you like that. And if you like to build more habits, better habits, and really be more productive on the long term and more sustainably, you can read Atomic Habits by James Clear. By the way, he also has a blog where he writes a lot about motivation, theories of motivation. And now, before we go to the Q&A, next step. So if you enjoyed this webinar, we actually have other types of events. The other type of event is actually a BD meetup. We host it every month. The next one is going to be on August 16 at 3 p.m. The format is way different than the webinar. So in the webinar, it's me talking and dissecting a topic. The BD meetup is actually you who choose what topics to talk about. And then we just brainstorm. You get the help of all the other business developers that participate in the webinar. You can talk about anything if you have challenges or something that you're not really sure about, or you would like to get a fresh perspective because, I don't know, maybe you're based in a country and you want to see how BD is done in another country. This is the perfect chance for you. If you're looking for jobs as well, you never know who might be there. Maybe they're able to introduce you to someone. And overall, it's a great way to network with other professionals. So you can join at this link, but Nathan is also going to put it in the chat. So you're very welcome. It's at 3 p.m., same time as the webinar, actually, but way different format, much more informal than this one.